I mean, what a day we've had already in terms of the sessions that we've covered and also the topics that we've covered. And I think anyone who's been here sort of for all of the sessions throughout the day will certainly agree that we have covered an awful lot of ground. You know, going back to Paddy's session earlier on, which seems a lifetime ago now, in terms of sort of talking about the history of social housing and professionalism and professional standards, and about, you know, how important that is, and some really practical discussions, you know, about retrofit and so on. So thank you for everything that everyone's taken part in so far. So we're on to our first session after lunch, and I'm delighted to welcome our two speakers for this session that we have now. So we have Rebecca Clark, who is the head of membership at CIH, and we're also delighted to be joined by Sue Bunt, who is the head of organisational development at Hyde. Both Sue and Rebecca are our main speakers for this session, so our timings for this particular session are 12:30 through until 1:15, after which we'll have another short break, a refreshment break, before we head into our last couple of sessions for the afternoon. So we've called this session has been called the wider picture and career paths. And I've seen I've had a preview of the presentations, and I'm really looking forward to this afternoon's session. So thank you both for that. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to, and I think it's Rebecca who's going first. Is that right?
Yes, it is,
Lovely.
Jill.
Over to you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Bear with me 1 second. I am going to try and load my slides up. Can everybody see those?
Yeah.
I'm going to need you to be a bit of a glamorous assistant in the background, Jill. Is that all right? Because
I can do part of it. I can assist. I can't help with the glamorous bit, but
that's all right. Don't worry. So Sue and I have had a couple of chats before, so hopefully will be a nice double act for you all to come back to after lunch. And I know there's a few people joining a bit later, and those of you watching the recording afterwards, hi to you as well. So I'm going to just try and do it. Yeah, there we go. So I thought it'd be nice for me. So I'm the head of membership at the CIH, and we've been working really hard to support National Careers Week this week as part of our broader aim to make housing a career of choice. So that's all about promoting that, not just amongst us already working in the sector, because I think we're quite good at that. You know, I think where we need to improve is working more closely with a lot of you who are careers advisors or, you know, work in colleges and stuff, and also amongst ourselves to promote that amongst family, friends, people we know, to really show that housing is an amazing place to be. So we've talked a little bit in the last session about the sheer breadth of careers on offer within housing. So this is a little quote that I thought would be nice to start us off. The sky is not the limit, it's just the beginning. And I think that is perfect when we start talking about careers in housing, because there is literally a home for everyone within housing, which I think it was Mal earlier, stole that from me. And I was thinking, oh, I've come up with a great line there, and then she stole it. So there we go, a home for everyone. We'll repeat it again. I promise I came up with it first. So a little bit of background about just how many people are already working in housing. So we don't have that much data on how many people work in charities, other organisations along that line, contractors and things like that, and even in local authorities, because you could have quite easily a housing department of 500 people within some bigger local authorities. So if you take that into account on top of that first point there, where we say 150,000 people plus work in the housing association part of the sector alone, you can see the sheer breadth of opportunity that's there. And it is definitely a growing and rapidly expanding sector, as Sue will talk about from her experience at Hyde in a moment's time. You look at the tenants that we work with, or customers as they're called in some organisations, over 5 million socially rented homes in the UK. So just imagine how many families and how many people are living in those homes that a career in housing could support and really help bolster what, you know, they receive in terms of services from us, as well as in terms of creating new homes as well, which again is something that I think Sue may touch upon given Hyde's profile within the sector. And And the most important thing for me as well is to recognise that housing, I think there's a perception that housing is just about housing officers, you know, and people like that. They don't necessarily see all of the people behind the scenes, so to speak, and the vast multitude of different job roles there are within housing. So even if you work as a marketing professional, a finance professional, whatever it may be, some of the ones that are perhaps less obvious, housing associations are crying out for skill sets like that. And there's definitely going to be a bit of a conversation from us about what future skill sets will look like within housing as well, which will hopefully then help when you're advising people, whether it be in your college or wherever it is that you're doing that work. So a little bit of a taster here. So this kind of underlines the point I've just made, really. So that's the Inside Housing website, which is a really good place to look for new job opportunities. I'll give that a plug because you get that as part of your membership. But on any job site you go on, even if you just type in housing jobs, the vast, you know, array of things that come up when you do that search, anything from customer support through to director level positions, governance, you know, there's so many transferable skills that can come into housing and add an amazing value to what we do. So it's definitely always an option, and there's some great career paths there for people. And the best part of it is that you're doing it all with a purpose as well. So we always say at the CIH that, you know, you could be the best finance professional in the world, but, you know, you're working in housing, you're doing it somewhere you make a difference. And this quote, I think, illustrates it beautifully. And this is something that I've stolen from Jim Strang, our former president, and just roll out all the time. So this is one you can keep as well if you'd like. But you can do more for somebody in a day in housing than what a lot of other professions can do in a whole lifetime. And that, as a group of people working in housing, is something we have to be really, really proud of, and really make sure we make a strong point of that. So I should have probably pre-warned you at the beginning, but Sue and I would actually like you to get involved a little bit. I know there's not huge amounts of people on the call, but it's just really to get a flavour of this, and we'll get some more results no doubt afterwards as well when we send this around. But I will put this link, or try and put this link, into the chat. Bear with me 1 second. Ooh. I'll put the link in. There we go. And then you should be able to click on that, and we're asking you, how much do you know about a career in housing or careers in housing? So let me just find my link. I knew this was a good idea at the time, but
not so much now.
No. Bear with me 1 second whilst I find my link again. This will be the easiest way. Copy, and then we'll go into our chat here. I'll just stop sharing for a second because nobody needs to see all of my Teams chats. Right, here we go. And then the beautiful part of this is that Sue's going to talk, and it will give me a chance to put the link in when we need it later on. There we go. So you should be able to click that link now, and it will take you through to our survey. So it will ask you, how much do you know about careers in housing? And it's first option, not a clue. The second option, a teeny bit. The third option, depends which bit. So you might know a little bit about careers in housing, but not everything. And then the final bit, I'm a housing careers guru. So if you think you know everything there is to know about careers in housing, then that's the option that you'd pick. And I'll keep an eye on our votes coming in. Oh, so we've got a couple, depends which bit. That seems to be a popular one. I think that's one of the whole points to the sessions today, hopefully, to raise awareness of the other bits that we might be able to do. I'll leave that open for a minute for those of you still playing around with it. And then if I share my screen again, hopefully what we'll be able to do, I'll hand over to Sue so she can start her section. And Sue is very lucky because I'm going to go into the glamorous assistant role now, and we're going to have a Professor Whitty moment where Sue's able to say, next slide, please, and then seamlessly the slides will change in the background. So she says.
Right. We hope, Rebecca.
Hopefully everyone's able to see Sue's slide now, her opening slide there about Hyde.
Okay, so thank you, Rebecca, and thanks for inviting me to this. I am actually not Professor Whitty. I hope I have better things to say than sometimes we hear from Professor Whitty. But I am Sue Bunt. I'm Head of Organisation Development at Hyde, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Hyde and some of the career stories of some of our people who are just some of those 150,000 people who work in the housing sector. And I guess what I really want to convey here is my personal opinion about why this sector is a great sector to work in, and why everybody, whether you're a graduate, whether you're a school leaver, whether you are doing something else totally and want to come into the sector, why everybody else should consider working in this sector. And I think we've heard that quite a lot today. So I'm hoping to continue with the passion. So, okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So just a little bit about me, first of all. So I have worked in social housing in organisation development and HR roles for 15 years, but I didn't start there. So like a lot of people, I think I came into the sector from somewhere else. I started actually as a community worker working on estates in the London Borough of Greenwich. And I worked there with housing officers and tenancy support workers and outreach workers, as they were called there, to work on some very large estates, many of which don't exist in that form anymore. And then I took an about turn and moved into adult education and further education and spent some years teaching. I then sort of rocked up in a local authority to do training and organisation development. And then 15 years ago, I moved into social housing, where I have been ever since, because for me, out of all those different organisations and all those different cultures, social housing for me is the best place to be. I think that's because for me, I'm a values-driven person. I'm not so bothered about how much I earn. I am more bothered about working in an organisation that makes a positive difference to people's lives, and also where I can feel that even though I don't work directly in housing because I work in a support service, human resources, that there's a clear connection between what I do every day and what my organisation does to improve people's lives. And my particular job is I look after learning and development, graduates, apprentices, developing our talented people. I also look after our employee engagement, and I look after diversity and inclusion. So even within my role, there's a huge amount of variety. And I think that's one of my themes today, that there's a lot of variety in housing, lots of things are obvious and lots of roles and careers that aren't so obvious. And the final thing I'd say about me before we move on to the next slide is out of work, I'm a career coach. And I work with people, with clients who are wanting to make a transition. And what I've noticed is that there's a very low level of knowledge and visibility about the housing sector. So people just don't know, and they are sometimes surprised. And obviously in my career coaching, I say, have you thought about working in the housing sector? And people say, what's that? So partly I wanted to come today, and perhaps with the recording more than maybe everybody who's here, help careers advisors, career coaches know what a great sector it is to work in. So if we could move on, Rebecca. So just a little bit about Hyde. Hyde was formed in 1967 when quite a few housing associations were formed. And this was in the wake of a housing crisis following the war. And there was a very seminal and important documentary called Cathy Come Home, which documented the struggles a single mother had as her family broke down, and the fact that she was made homeless. And it caught the heart of the nation, I think, at the time. And the Duke of Edinburgh actually put out an appeal to people who sat in round tables, Rotary clubs, and said, we have to do something. And a group of young men in their late 20s, early 30s in southeast London came together to do something, and they formed Hyde. And their goal was they were estate agents, solicitors, so professional young people. Their goal was to every year buy 10 properties, renovate them and make them available for people to live in. And these were dilapidated post-war properties. And they formed Hyde. Hyde now has 105, well, it has 50,000 properties, 105,000 people live in our properties. So we've really grown over the 50 years. But they started with a sense of social purpose and creating a home. And we, like many other housing associations, still have that absolutely front and centre of what we do. So Hyde's mission is to provide more people with a roof over their head so they can make a home. And as I've said, we are a landlord. We have 50,000 properties. Around 105,000 people live in our homes. And we've calculated that every day, 10 families get a home with Hyde, 10 different families. And that's that connection between whatever you do and making a difference to people's lives. We're also a house builder. So we play our part today in trying to help with the housing crisis. We can't do it all on our own, but we work with others, with local authorities, in joint ventures to build more houses, and we operate in London and the South East. And finally, we're also a charity. So we have a charitable arm, we raise money, we invest in our residents and in our communities. And that's a really important part of what we do as well, and brings out a whole number of other sorts of roles and careers that someone working in a housing association can have. Could we move on? Rebecca, please. Okay, so we employ 1,100 people spread in London, down to the south coast, to Chichester, Southampton, in Kent, and also as far east as Peterborough. And here are just a few of our people. As you can see on the left there, these are people who work in our development department, and they're on site on one of our new builds, no idea where it is. So there's a whole number of careers and roles that are around the development side of things, buying land, working on projects, working through housing projects, planning permission, working with local authorities, lots of roles in that area. In the middle there, you can see one of our caretakers proudly holding his Hyde Superhero Award for Employee of the Year. And below him is one of our antisocial behaviour officers whose job is to help our communities function in a peaceful way so that everybody can enjoy the neighbourhoods they live in. Next to her is one of our 200 trades guys. We're going to have a couple of women, but mainly men, electricians, plumbers, etc., who repair our homes as part of our landlord function. And at the top there are two of our staff who are welfare rights advisors, so a totally different side of Hyde. And in fact, the lady who's sitting at the back there, Edna, recently managed to get back £20,000 for one of our residents who had been underpaid in benefits. So a very different job, very direct positive impact. And as I was thinking about this talk, I calculated we have over 50 different roles in Hyde alone. So a career really for everybody. Could we move on? So I think today we've heard quite a lot about the different roles, the housing roles, housing officers, we call them property managers. We have technical roles like surveyors, we have the developers I've talked about, we have our trade staff, we have roles that are around delivering and building partnerships in the community. We have an education training team who help our residents into work. We have a tenancy sustainment team who are the benefits advisors. So lots of different frontline roles that touch directly our residents and people's lives. And then behind the scenes, there are lots of other roles. So roles in it, like you'd get in any large organisation, roles in HR, finance, communications, IT. So almost whatever you're interested in, whether it's housing delivery as such, or whether it's the sector that you're interested in, and you have a different training, a different skill set, there's probably something for you in almost every housing association. Okay, so I was just going to take you through 3 case studies, 3 of our staff, just to give you a flavour of how people can develop a great career in housing. So could we move on to Ashley, please, Rebecca? Okay, so I'm starting with Ashley. Ashley, I'm smiling just as I'm thinking about Ashley. Ashley joined us in 2015 as an apprentice. I think he'd had about a year's work experience in retail. We have an apprentice scheme like many organisations do. He came in and he's really advanced his career very quickly. He did his year doing his level 3 business admin qualification, and he got in 2016 his first permanent job as an administrator. He actually won our Apprentice of the Year in 2016, and he also was the winner in the CIH Southern Region Apprentice of the Year. He was someone who was going to go far. I remember talking to Ashley and asking him what his career ambition was, and he said, I want to be chief exec. And he may well make that. When I asked him just last week about that, do you still want to be chief exec? He told me that he was happy being a property manager, which is what he was promoted to in 2019. So he's come through the organisation in a matter of 6 years from an apprentice to being a property manager, where he has his own patch of properties that he looks after. He's also a reverse mentor for a CEO of another housing association, and he sits on our junior board. So we're able to offer him some great development opportunities, which I think is a characteristic of many in the sector. It's great when you work for a housing association, the development that you can get, and that will help him on his career journey. And you can see from what Ashley says there on that quote that he's really appreciated his professional development, but he's doing it in an organisation that has a positive impact both within the sector and society. And that, I think, that theme runs through so many of our staff. That's why they work for us. Can we move on to talk about Subhatra now? Because Subhatra's career journey is something different. She did her degree at Heriot-Watt University in 1999. It was a degree in property and estate management, and she worked in the private sector for quite a lot of years. And then she moved with her husband, who was in the army, to Cyprus, spent some time there, retrained as a teacher and taught for a couple of years. But I think her heart was always in housing. She returned into property, working in block management for a small company for 4 years. And then she came to Hyde as a property manager, which is the same job that Ashley does, and a core housing role. And she was really happy to do that because it brought her into a different sort of organisation, a different sort of sector. And then a year later, she grabbed the opportunity to become a trainee construction project manager. And I think that's great. We don't have that many women being trainee construction project managers, so lovely to have her there. She works on new build sites. She works with more experienced project managers, and she has her own small project where she's in charge of a new development. And I think she's just about to move to be a fully fledged construction project manager, and she started a whole new career. And as you can see from what Subhatra said when I asked her, she likes the fact that there are different areas at Hyde, so she can develop her skills, she can cross over different areas, and really develop a nicely broadened career within property. So that's Subhatra. And my final case study is Kate. And Kate's been at Hyde for 16 years. She loves it. And she came in as a graduate, and she joined as a continuous improvement assistant. And then she built many policy roles and research roles. So Kate shows how you can build a career in the non-housing side of our organisation. She did lots of stuff around housing policy, strategy, customer insight. And in 2014, so took her 10 years. She became a head of strategy and business intelligence with us. Did that for a couple of years, went off and had her twins, and she came back to a promotion to partnerships and regeneration director. And then just a year later, she became a strategy and partnerships director. So she's pretty senior now and has forged a career in Hyde in the whole area of improvement policy, research, insight, and then strategy. And as you can see from Kate, the same theme is there. so many new things to learn, so many disciplines and career paths, but she too stays in housing because she likes the ethos and is happy to be part of something positive for people and communities. So I hope those 3 case studies give you a sense of what the possibilities are, and how working for a housing association can be such a great way to develop a career, to keep broadening, to extend skills, and to at the same time work to your values and make a positive impact on people and communities. Okay, well, Rebecca said that I would talk a little bit about the future of skills, and I've actually stolen this slide from a career coach called John Fitzgerald, so I hope he doesn't mind. I'm sure he won't. And he has been thinking about the future of work and the skills that are needed in the future. And I'm not going to run through these, but you can see there are quite a lot of skills, some which are there and some which I think are going to be more important in the future. So being able to attract people with digital skills, being able to attract people with data and analytics skills, being able to use digital technologies to create new ways of doing things are going to be very important in our sector. As a sector, we're going to change. But equally important are the interpersonal skills that have always been important in our sector. The collaboration, the connecting with people, the ability to embrace different cultures, different perspectives, different ways of doing things. So some of these are old skills that will be needed, and some of these are new skills. And the reason I thought I'd share this one is because part of my job is thinking about Hyde of the future and how we're changing, how we're having to change, and how we're wanting to change. And I think there, for us, and I can only talk about Hyde, there are 3 areas. And the first one is around digitalisation. So making our service, we're a bit behind, I think, as a sector compared to what people are used to in terms of accessing services online. Certainly at Hyde, we have quite a lot of work going on at the moment to make it easier for our customers to access their rent accounts, to be able to book repairs online, all the basic things that they currently have to phone up for. So digitalisation, I think, will be something in our sector over the next 5 to 10 years that lots of organisations will be looking at. And we'll need the skills to be able to drive that. The second one is data. So making use, there's this phrase, big data, making use of our data, understanding our customers, using analytics sensibly to make better decisions is something, in my opinion, that housing associations will also work towards in the coming years. And that requires a different skill set. And there may be all sorts of graduates or other people out there who have those skills. And I think as a sector, we'd love to have you join us. And then there's change, which is a skill, I think, for every organisation. So change and resilience. And this year has certainly shown us that, the need for that. So people who will be able to change, will be agile, will lead in a different way, are also going to be really important in our sector. So that was really sort of the end of my slides. But I guess the real point I want to make is it's a great sector to work in. What everybody does, whatever the jobs, and you've seen there's quite a range of jobs, makes a positive impact on people's lives. That's what keeps me in housing, and I hope that's what will attract and keep others in the sector. So I think that's me done, Rebecca.
Brilliant. Thanks. One of the things we wanted to do, hopefully this is going to work a bit better now, so I've already got the link sorted. We wanted to know is now that you've heard the presentation from Sue, and a little bit at the beginning, the cameo from me, whether or not you feel that's improved your knowledge of housing as a career. So if people can click the link in the chat, then you'll be able to vote again. I think last time the overwhelming response was depends which bit. And that may well still be the case, because you're not going to suddenly be an expert after what we've said. But I think the breadth of housing again has really been emphasised. So thank you so much, Sue, for doing that. If people are happy doing that in the background, then what we thought would be a good idea is to move on to questions if people have got any. Jill, I don't know if you want to come back in and attempt to chair. You'll do a far better job than what I normally do, I'm sure. So you bring some order to proceedings.
Or disorder, actually.
Well, maybe.
So, yeah, okay, so where do we start? Thank you both very much for that session. It was so informative, and you know, so many takeaways that really, I just don't know where to start. Bex, you know, thank you for giving that really good overview about the size of the sector and about, you know, the breadth of it. And I think what's really important there is to understand about, you know, some of those people who work in this sector that we can't, you know, sort of capture in terms of the data that we have. So actually the size of the sector is more enormous than sort of, you know, we sort of, you know, we sort of fully understand, which, you know, obviously does create a really wide range of opportunities. And so thank you so much for the detail of your presentation, you know, sort of so many takeaways from it in terms of, you know, we learned a lot earlier about the overall history of social housing, to actually then hear about how Hyde was established, you know, was brilliant. And I certainly had no idea about the history of Hyde at all. So thank you for that. And also, I think as well, when you see your presentation and the way it was mapped out, actually helping to realise all of those different opportunities within the sector, and, you know, some of those shots on their own really, I think, help to give us such a strong message about the diverse range of opportunities, which is what we've been trying to do through National Careers Week, and will continue to do in terms of the messages that we are given. There is a home for anybody, whatever your passion, whatever your skill set, in housing organisations within our sector. And, you know, I've written, this week has been a series of words and phrases, you know, and so talking about Sapatra, you know, her heart was housing. You know, that's really really strong messages. Some of the messages that have come through with some of the blogs that we did earlier this week, one of the ones that sticks in my head was talking about Helen, one of our active members, who was hooked on housing. You know, there's so many great takeaways in terms of the strength of that passion, and to see the stuff around the future skills. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Sue, because I think for us, you know, certainly for me, some of that certainly aware of, but I think it's absolutely right to sort of recognise that things like digitalisation and data and that change and resilience, you know, are those skills that are needed going forward for our housing profession. If I was to sort of ask you both about, if you were to, as we're getting towards the end of our session, if you were to give somebody, you know, maybe up to 3 tips about how to sort of start to forge their career in housing, what would it be? Sue, could I go to you first?
Yeah, 3 tips. Okay, so I think the first tip would be make some connections and find out more about the opportunities, so that you start at a place where you think you're most connected to, where you have the skills or what appeals to you. The second tip would be know that you can probably progress in different ways over your career. So start where you can, and know that the sector will afford you the opportunities. And then the third thing is, you know, as soon as you're working for an organisation, find yourself a mentor. I know other people have said that. Such a good thing to do, and grab. Oh, I'm going to do a 4th one. Grab every opportunity that's open to you, because there will be loads. Brilliant,
lovely, thank you. And apologies, I really don't want to feel like I'm sort of throwing the two of you under a bus by asking you that question. But Bex, if I can ask you the same, and, you know, I'll allow you to, you know, repeat one of Sue's if you have to, but you got 3.
Well, that's very generous of you, thanks, Jill. I'm always up for a cheesy quote, and Jill's just pulled a few of them off from this week that other people might think sound cheesy, but I genuinely believe in, if you're doing something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I think more and more now, people, coming through the generations, even people that are later on in their careers, which is the other kind of side that we often forget. We have this focus on young people and stuff like that, and what they're attracting them into housing. There's some really high skilled people out there at the minute, especially given COVID, that are going to be available looking for new opportunities. And I hear about so many people that get to that stage in their career where maybe they've worked in the private sector for a long time and they now want to do something with more of a purpose and give something back. So I think find what you're passionate about, which is kind of what Sue said, but I'm not going to take it as one that I've stolen from Sue. Work out what makes you tick. What are the things you really, really care about? And if it is to make a difference, I think housing is genuinely one of the most, powerful careers you can have to do that. And that quote earlier from Jim about how you can do more for somebody in a day than what a lot of other professions can do in a lifetime is genuinely true, because you're keeping a roof over somebody's head and offering them a lot of support that if the social housing sector wasn't there, I dread to think what, would happen. I think the other side of it, once you're there, I think being able to kind of network, being able to look at what other organisations are doing, because there's so many different types of housing organisation, it's important you're working in the right one for you. And local authorities offer some really, really good opportunities now as well, to go and work in those if, again, you're passionate about the public service side of things. And then the final thing, and I'm bound to say this, and hopefully I don't get shot, but I'd become a CIH member. But, I joke about that, but I think, it is a really good way to get access to all of the things that Sue mentioned as well. So we do have our mentoring programme as a part of it. We do lots of events and networking opportunities and share good policy and practice. So if you're just entering the sector, there's a whole wealth of things there that you can go and access that can really help you to address some of those things. So that's my plug for membership as well. So yeah, I think that's 3 things, Jill. Yeah,
that's brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you for plugging CIH membership as well. And I think that sort of, it is important, when we talk about membership, although we jokingly laugh about plugging membership, I think the thing, that's really important for us to remember, here we are talking about our professional body, this is our home of professional standards, and collectively as a strong membership organisation, that's where we have that ability to influence and, and provide housing education and qualifications and training that that are fit for purpose and for our profession as well. So absolutely. Is there anybody in the audience who's got particular questions either for Rebecca or Sue? I'm just going to sort of scan to see whether that is whether everyone's been sort of shy with it being a Friday afternoon. But there have been so many takeaways from that session as well today. It looks as though everybody is being a bit shy for the moment. But so I don't want to sort of make us run over time. Your presentations have been absolutely fantastic and really informative. So thank you both for that. And so pleased to have this as a recording that we'll be able to use as our resources going forward. And we'll be looking at sort of how we really use these resources to get the word out there. So what we'll be doing now is when we come to the end of this session here, we will then have another 20-minute break. So again, another virtual tea break and refreshment break for us all. After that, we'll then be coming back, and the session that we'll be doing after that will be focused on about sort of our younger generation. So how do we look at encouraging younger housing professionals, people to join us, at that younger age? We'll hear from James Ballantyne, who is the Vice Chair of CIH Futures. And James will have lots to share with us in terms of the great work that CIH Futures is doing around doing things like that, encouraging bringing younger generations into the housing profession as a career of choice, but also talking about the great work that CIH Futures is doing around raising the profile of those younger housing professionals who are already within the sector. And he can also talk about the housing challenge, which has been launched this week as part of National Careers Week. And we're also going to be joined by Aileen McDonald, who is a graduate trainee at Kingdom Housing Association in Scotland. And she's going to be sharing with us her passion for housing and her perspective as a younger housing professional. And she's got a great story in terms of sort of her experience and her route for getting into this sector. So without further ado, we'll end this session. And again, thanks Bex and Sue, so much appreciated for all your time today and for everybody that's taken part and everyone that's going to be listening to this recording going forward. And see you back here in 20 minutes. Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.